You know, when most people picture a cat, there's a very specific stereotype that comes to mind right away.
Oh, absolutely. The classic aloof feline.
Exactly. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The furry little ninja who basically ignores you all day.
Yeah, and then maybe they saunter over to your coffee table, lock eyes with you, and just deliberately knock your absolute favorite ceramic mug onto the floor.
Just to watch it shatter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so true. And then, of course, they only acknowledge your existence again when they decide the food bowl is looking a little empty.
The ultimate independent roommate who, barely tolerates you. It's this culturally ingrained image we've carried around for decades. We tend to view dogs as man's best friend and cats as, well, man's indifferent overseer.
But today, for you, the listener, we are taking a massive wrecking ball to that entire stereotype. Okay, let's unpack this, because we have a stack of medical journals, bioacoustics research, and some truly groundbreaking psychological studies in front of us today.
Yeah, we're talking about data from MDPI, the Human Animal Bond Research Institute, and the University of Missouri.
And what these sources reveal is that cats are not these aloof, selfish creatures at all. In fact, they are highly evolved, deeply attuned biological and emotional healing partners for humans.
I mean, even that classic behavior you just mentioned, knocking the mug off the table, our sources actually touch on that.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah. Researchers like Malamed and Sueda explain that knocking objects off shelves isn't sheer malice. It's often an exploratory behavior.
Yeah.
It's a learned strategy to initiate interaction with you. They are trying to figure out the environment and basically saying, hey, pay attention to me, let's engage.
So they aren't evil, they just have a really destructive way of saying hello. I love that.
Exactly.
And honestly, paying attention to them is exactly what we should be doing, because the medical data we found on what happens to human biology when we live with a cat is just staggering.
Oh, it really is.
Let's start with the heart health data. I read this statistic in our sources, and I literally had to read it twice. Cat owners have a 40% reduced risk of having a heart attack.
Yeah, the robustness of the epidemiological data is what makes it so compelling. We're looking at a 20-year follow-up study conducted by the Zenit Qureshi Stroke Center.
20 years. Wow.
Right, and they utilized the NANES TUSIC data. That's the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. They followed over 4,400 people over 2 decades.
So they were tracking them for a long time.
Mm-hmm. To do that, researchers continually track medical records, lifestyle surveys, hospital admissions year after year to look for long-term patterns.
And what did they find exactly?
Well, what they found was that having a cat, or even a history of owning a cat, was independently associated with a significantly decreased risk of dying from a myocardial infarction, which is a heart attack.
And they controlled for all the usual suspects, right? Because I imagine someone listening might just say, well, maybe cat owners just happen to be healthier people in general.
Oh yeah, they adjusted for everything. Age, gender, race, systolic blood pressure, smoking history, diabetes, BMI,
The whole spectrum.
the entire spectrum of cardiovascular risk factors. And even with all those factors mathematically leveled out, that protective effect remained.
That is wild.
And there is another study focusing on adults over 50 without major chronic conditions that highlights a really fascinating gender difference. In that specific cohort, women who owned cats saw their hazard ratio for dying of a stroke plummet to 0.22 compared to non-cat owners.
Wait, let's pause there for a second. Hazard ratio is one of those textbook terms that can sound, a bit opaque. What does a hazard ratio of 0.22 actually mean for the average person listening right now?
Right, so a hazard ratio is basically a way for epidemiologists to compare the probability of an event happening in one group versus another over time.
Yeah.
If the ratio is 1, the risk is equal. A ratio of 0.22 means the risk for the cat-owning group is only 22% of the risk of the non-cat-owning group.
So wait, their risk of a fatal stroke dropped by nearly 80% just by having a feline companion.
Exactly, an almost 80% drop.
That reduction is massive. Did they see that same drop with dog owners? Because dogs are usually the ones, dragging us out of the house for a walk, which you'd think would be better for cardiovascular health.
You would think so, but the dog owners in that specific study actually didn't show the same statistically significant drop for strokes.
Really?
Yeah, the researchers suggest there is something highly specific to the human-cat companion dynamic that is heavily regulating autonomic nervous system tension, particularly for these women.
Okay, another jargon alert. Autonomic nervous system tension. Explain that to me like I'm 5. What is actually happening in my body when that tension is regulated?
So think of your autonomic nervous system as having 2 main gears. You have the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight mode.
Right.
It dumps cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream when you're stressed. Like when you're stuck in traffic or on a tight deadline at work.
Oh, I'm very familiar with that gear.
We all are. Then you have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest mode. It lowers your heart rate and tells your body it's safe to relax.
Okay, makes sense.
Modern life keeps us trapped in that high-tension fight or flight gear. The deep, calming interaction of sitting quietly with a cat acts as a biological switch. It shifts those women out of fight or flight and into rest and digest much more effectively.
That brings up a question I have to ask. Wait, is this just because petting a fluffy animal is relaxing? Like, we all know sitting on the couch with a warm cup of tea and a cat in your lap is a nice stress-reducing vibe. Or is there actual physical science happening here beyond just feeling calm?
There is absolutely physical science happening. It goes way beyond psychological comfort.
Okay, I'm listening.
The act of a cat purring isn't just an acoustic sound you hear. It's a mechanical vibration that transfers into your body.
Like actual physical vibrations.
Yes. Cats purr using the laryngeal muscles and the diaphragm, creating a consistent pattern of frequencies that typically range anywhere from 20 to 150 hertz.
Yeah, that's quite a range.
It is, but domestic house cats have dominant frequencies at exactly 25 and 50 hertz. And what's fascinating here is science has known for a long time that mechanical vibrations in that exact 25 to 50 hertz range are deeply therapeutic for mammalian tissue and bone.
The exact same frequency.
The exact same.
That is wild. So it's not just a cute noise. It is a physical force. You're basically saying a cat is a purring biological ultrasound machine.
That is a phenomenal analogy, yes. The purr is literally a form of physical medicine.
That is insane.
The sources referenced a specific study from 1994 by a Dr. Chen working with rabbits. Dr. Chen's study demonstrated that applying mechanical vibrations at 25 and 50 hertz to bone promoted bone strength by 20%.
How does that actually work, though? Like, how does a vibration make a bone stronger?
It comes down to cellular mechanics. Your bones are constantly remodeling themselves. The cells responsible for building new bone are called osteoblasts.
Osteoblast, got it.
When you exercise, say, by jogging or lifting weights, the mechanical stress of your muscles pulling on your bones signals those osteoblasts to get to work and lay down new, denser bone tissue.
Okay, so it's a response to stress.
All right. And what Dr. Chen found is that the 25 to 50 hertz frequency perfectly mimics that positive mechanical stress. It physically stimulates the osteoblasts and drastically speeds up fracture healing, even without weight-bearing exercise.
Which perfectly explains that legendary veterinary adage. Every vet student apparently hears this. If you put a cat and a bunch of broken bones in the same room, the bones will heal.
Yeah, it's a widely recognized phenomenon in veterinary medicine. Cats rarely suffer from bone cancers like osteosarcoma.
Really?
Yeah. They rarely get joint diseases like hip dysplasia, which is notoriously common in large dogs. Their bones heal remarkably fast compared to other animals.
And we have to talk about high-rise syndrome, because this part of the research completely blew my mind. There was a veterinary study of 132 cats that had fallen out of high-rise windows in urban areas.
Oh, the data on that is astonishing. The average fall was 5.5 stories, and the record in that specific study was a cat that fell 45 stories onto pavement and survived.
45 stories. I mean, out of all those cats, there was a 90% survival rate.
It's incredible.
Which sounds scientifically impossible for a creature that small. But the sources heavily link this survival to their incredible ability to self-heal microfractures and tissue damage rapidly.
Yeah, the internal vibrational mechanism of the purr is a massive factor in that recovery. But, this presents an evolutionary paradox for biologists.
How so?
Well, purring takes an immense amount of energy. To produce that sound, a cat has to rapidly vibrate the folds of the glottis and the diaphragm continuously on both the inhale and the exhale.
Oh, right, because it never stops.
Exactly. If you are a severely injured animal, or if you're a mother giving birth, energy is your absolute most precious resource. You don't waste it on making noise.
Right. If it takes so much energy, why do cats purr when they are stressed or injured or literally in labor? You'd think they would want to conserve every ounce of strength to survive the crema.
Researcher Elizabeth von Mogenthaler asked that exact question. She's a specialist in bioacoustics at the Fauna Communications Research Institute.
And what did she find?
She measured and analyzed the purrs of 34 different felids, everything from cheetahs and pumas to domestic house cats. She concluded that the purr evolved specifically as a low-energy internal healing mechanism.
So it's basically an evolutionary workaround.
Yes. In the wild, cats adapted to conserve energy through long periods of sleep and rest. This purr acts as a built-in physical therapy device that prevents muscle atrophy and increases bone density while they are completely sedentary.
It's an evolutionary survivor's advantage. They can sleep all day and still keep their bones strong. And because they are sitting on our laps doing this, that 25 hertz vibration is transferring directly into human tissue. If you, the listener, have ever had a cat fall asleep on your chest while you were sick, you know exactly what this feels like.
Oh, for sure.
You can feel that heavy rhythmic vibration deep in your ribs. We are quite literally soaking up their vibrational physical therapy.
And the medical applications of those frequencies are well documented. They reduce swelling, promote tissue repair, and even ease dyspnea, which is severe shortness of breath.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there are documented cases in veterinary clinics where cats with severe respiratory distress were placed on the verge of euthanasia, but once they were induced to purr, the vibrations helped open their airways and they began breathing normally again. It's a deeply mechanical, physiological tool.
So they have evolved this incredible tool to heal their own bodies and survive in the wild. But here's where it gets really interesting, because they've spent the last 10,000 years living indoors with us.
Yep.
And the sources show they realize they can use that exact same biological tool on our drains to survive inside our houses. They have essentially weaponized the purr for emotional manipulation.
Well, they have certainly adapted it for highly effective cross-species communication.
Oh, I'll say weaponized. Let's talk about the solicitation purr. This is from a brilliant study out of the University of Sussex by Dr. Karen McComb. And I love that she literally started this research because she was annoyed by her own cat waking her up too early.
I know, it's great. She called the study Persuasion.
Amazing name.
What her team discovered is that domestic indoor cats, specifically ones that have a close one-on-one relationship with their human owners, will actively embed a high-pitched cry or whine directly into their normal low-frequency 25 hertz purr.
It's like a Frankenstein purr. They use this specific layered sound when they want food or attention.
Exactly.
I know this sound intimately. It's the sound that hits my ears at exactly 5 a.m. every morning. It's not a regular rumbling purr, and it's not a normal meow.
No, it's very distinct.
It's this urgent, vibrating hum that makes it biologically impossible for me to stay in bed.
And there's a very specific scientific reason your brain won't let you ignore it. If we connect this to the bigger picture, acoustic analysis shows that the high-frequency cry embedded in that purr shares striking acoustic similarities with the cry of a human baby.
Oh wow, they really are little ninjas.
We are! Cats have essentially figured out how to hack the human mammalian response.
That is so wild to think about.
Yeah, as mammals, humans are hardwired at a neurological level to respond to the distress cries of offspring. It immediately triggers our nurturing instincts and causes a spike in our attention.
And the cat is just hijacking that.
Basically, yeah. By hiding this high-pitched, baby-like cry within a purr, which our brains already associate with contentment and safety, the cat creates an acoustic signal that humans find incredibly difficult to tune out.
So you get out of bed at 5 a.m., not just because the sound is annoying, but because your biology is screaming at you to attend to a crying infant. So my cat is emotionally hacking my mammalian brain to get breakfast faster. That is brilliant.
Yeah.
And honestly, slightly terrifying.
It is a bit of both.
But it really highlights just how deeply attuned cats have become to human biology and psychology over thousands of years of domestication. They know exactly how to push our biological buttons.
They really do.
And that deep attunement leads us to the social impacts of this relationship, which I found to be the most moving part of the research we reviewed today. Let's talk about the Feline Friends study and how this applies to neurodivergent children.
Right. For a very long time, the focus on animal-assisted interventions for autism has centered almost entirely on dogs.
Right, you always hear about therapy dogs.
But Dr. Gretchen Carlisle, a research scientist at the MU Thompson Center for Autism and Neurodevelopmental Disorders, wanted to investigate the impact of cats, specifically because families managing autism often face incredibly high stress levels.
And bringing an animal into the home is a huge decision. If the animal isn't a good fit, it can just add to the chaos. So how did they even go about setting this up? Like, how do you screen a cat to make sure it's going to be a good therapy animal for a child with autism?
They were very methodical about it. They took shelter cats and meticulously screened them using something called the feline temperament profile.
Okay, what is that?
It's a standardized assessment where researchers evaluate a cat's reactions to various stimuli. They test how the cat responds to being held awkwardly, how they react to sudden loud noises or unpredictable movements.
So testing their patience, basically.
Right, and they only selected cats that scored a 20 or higher on this profile.
Wait, what does a score of 20 actually tell the researchers?
A score of 20 or higher indicates a highly calm, tolerant, and adaptable temperament. It means the cat doesn't easily startle or become aggressive when its environment suddenly changes.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
So once they identified these highly tolerant cats, they placed them with families who had autistic children between the ages of 6 and 14.
And the results were profound. We're talking about an 18-week follow-up. And the children showed significant, measurable increases in empathy and pro-social behaviors.
There's huge improvements.
And at the same time, they saw sharp decreases in separation anxiety, in bullying behaviors, and in hyperactivity. The cats acted like a kind of emotional anchor in the house.
But it raises a really interesting question. As you mentioned, dogs are usually the go-to therapy animals. We see them in hospitals, in schools, and airports. Why did cats have such a uniquely powerful effect in this specific context with these children?
It really comes down to sensory profiles. Children with autism frequently experience sensory sensitivities. They can easily become overwhelmed by loud noises, unpredictable movements, or high physical demands.
Right.
A dog, even a very well-trained therapy dog, is generally a higher energy presence. They bark, they jump, they require outdoor walks, they stare at you.
Right. A golden retriever bounding into a room is a massive amount of sensory input.
It is. For a child with sensory processing challenges, a dog's enthusiasm can sometimes feel like a sensory assault.
That makes so much sense.
Cats, on the other hand, offer a much quieter, more predictable presence.
Yeah.
They are low arousal animals. Carlisle's research emphasizes that these calm cats offer the children what she termed unconditional acceptance.
Unconditional acceptance.
Yeah, they provided a safe, non-judgmental space. One of the qualitative quotes from a parent in the MDPI study perfectly captured this dynamic. The parent said they could literally see their child practicing his learned social skills on the cat.
Oh, that is so beautiful. The cat acts as a safe social lubricant.
Exactly. Because human social interaction is incredibly complex and high stakes, it requires decoding microexpressions on faces, interpreting tone of voice, reading body language, understanding sarcasm.
It's a lot.
That is exhausting and stressful, especially for someone who is neurodivergent. The cat removes all of those human social stressors. The child can practice caregiving, empathy, and communication with a living being that isn't going to judge them or correct them if they get the social script wrong. And when you layer the physical science we talked about earlier on top of that social interaction, it makes total sense. You have this low arousal animal that provides deep pressure therapy by lying on the child's lap.
Yes.
It vibrates at a 25 hertz frequency that physically calms the human nervous system and shifts them out of fight or flight. And it provides a zero pressure social interaction. It completely changes the dynamic of a stressful household.
And the studies noted that the bond between the child and the cat formed almost instantly and remained strong over time. Crucially, because cats are relatively low maintenance, it didn't create an undue burden of care on the parents, which is vital for families already managing complex daily needs.
So what does this all mean? For you, the listener, I hope this completely reshapes how you look at the cat sleeping on your chair right now. We started this deep dive talking about the myth of the aloof, indifferent roommate who knocks your stuff over just to be a jerk.
Which we now know is just them saying hi.
Exactly. The reality is so much richer. Whether you are recovering from a hard day at work, dealing with chronic anxiety, or literally healing from a physical injury, that purring ball of fur is an active participant in your health.
They really are.
By simply sitting in your lap and purring, they are lowering your blood pressure, reducing your stroke risk, and actively altering your cellular biology for the better.
This raises an important question, though, about how we categorize the animals we bring into our lives. We often view pets as property or, simply as companions for our own entertainment.
Right, like they're just living decor.
Yeah, but the epidemiological and biological data insists that we view them as symbiotic partners. They are active participants in our physiological and psychological health ecosystems. Recognizing that mutuality allows us to appreciate and care for them on a much deeper, more respectful level.
It really does. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today as we wrap up. If domestic cats have evolved this highly specific mechanical 25 to 50 hertz vibration to heal their own bones and tissues over thousands of years, and we now know human biology responds to those exact same frequencies, could the future of our own advanced medical healing technology eventually be modeled entirely after the biology of a house cat? Just imagine. The next time your cat knocks a mug off the shelf to get your attention, maybe they aren't being a jerk. Maybe they are a highly evolved medical device, just trying to remind you that it's time for your daily vibrational therapy.